chicken.
Okay, I guess we're ready.
Turkey ham. Oh, you can eat anything.
This seminar is supposed to be on blindfolded solving tips and tricks. My name is Mike Hughey, and I got into blindfolded solving in about 2007, just a few months after I got into cubing. That was the thing that really interested me and really got me hooked. So, I think I just like it because it's kind of hard. It's fun. Tester.
He forgot to mention that he's currently the North American record holder for solving multiple cubes blindfolded. My name is Chester. I'm from Malaysia. I solve cubes blindfolded. I've had 2 world records. They are both gone now, and I like solving cubes blindfolded because it's fun. I know you don't believe that, but yeah. So what we're going to be talking about today is not like teaching you how to solve a cube blindfolded, because that isn't doable in 30 minutes. We're going to talk about, like what Mike said, just tips and tricks, and we're going to start off with memorization. How you memorize a cube. I think that's what a lot of people have trouble with. They don't understand how you memorize a cube, or memorize 17, 25, 30, 50 cubes. There's actually, it's not, random. There are memo methods, and yeah, I'll let Mike start off with his memory method, which is called.
Yeah, it used to be, back just a few years ago, the big method for memorization was actually visual. And Ro Hessler used to be really good at it. He was one of the good people at it. Visual works pretty well and can be pretty fantastic for small amounts. But as you get bigger and bigger, it gets harder. Even the people who are really good at it, it seems like they just can't retain quite enough with pure visual method to be able to pull off solve after solve after solve. You've got a really solid method for memorizing. You can really practice all day long, and it doesn't get too exhausting. You can just keep going and going and going. There are all kinds of different methods. Some of the best ones involve some sort of a journey. So you come up with some sort of a process that you walk through, and you place certain images in those places to be able to memorize. What I personally use is I use a Roman rooms method. I have a set of different rooms, and each room has 9 locations in it. And I always go the same order through those locations. I have a route through those locations. And since I have a bunch of rooms, I can keep things grouped. So when I'm doing big cubes, I'll have all of my obliques in one place, and all of my X centers in one place, and all of my plus centers in another place. So I can keep them organized that way. It makes it a little easier to tell. You don't wonder when you get to this spot, was this for a particular type of edges, or a particular type of centers, or a particular type of other things. So having the Roman rooms helps me that way. And then I just put 3 images in each location, and I create a picture for that location where I see maybe it's the light in the ceiling up here is my location. So I imagine one of the images hanging from that location attached to 2 of the others somehow, or something of that nature. And I'll just do that for everything. And I can just memorize as much as I want to if I've got enough locations. I currently have about 30 rooms, I think, that I use. So 30 times 9 locations that I can use. Store a lot of stuff.
My method doesn't use rooms. It started off as it doesn't have a name. I kind of made it up. I started learning this method from Chris Hardwick's website. It's called a journey method. But then I didn't have enough journeys. I don't have like 30 rooms like Mike, so I just make up my own things. Like I call them hooks on the spot. Usually, not on the spot. Like sometimes an hour before solve, sometimes the night before, sometimes 2 minutes before. I just make stuff up as I go. It helps because if you don't have a prepared set of things, a prepared set of things can be good if you like being prepared. But if you want to come up with stuff on the fly, one of the benefits is that there's no memory interference. It wasn't there in your head before you planted it in your head 2 minutes ago, so it doesn't. The memory sticks better, I think. My experience tells me that. I know this is all kind of vague, so we're actually going to do an example right now of how we memorize things. All right. So before you can memorize a cube, well, like Mike said, before this, the most popular method was visual. And if you don't know what visual is, it's what it sounds like. You look at a cube and you remember what it looks like. There's not a lot of information to hang on to. So all these methods we're talking about involve assigning letters or numbers or characters to each piece, sometimes each sticker on your cube. And then what you're memorizing is not what it looks like, but you're memorizing a bunch of letters, a bunch of numbers, sometimes letters and numbers mixed together. And that string is a lot easier to memorize. That string of letters is a lot easier to memorize when you have like 30 cubes than instead of just using visual memory. So I'm gonna let Mike go first, and he'll show you how he does it.
So I have, for every possible set of 2 letters, I have an image that I've already pre-prepared. It's nice to have that if you're not real good at thinking up stuff on the fly, but a lot of people are really good at thinking up stuff on the fly. So it's worth it to learn a method like this where you don't have pre-prepared images. Just make up stuff on the fly. You have 2 letters. What does that indicate to you? What would you think of when you see the letters IA? And see if you can come up with something that you'll remember. You can just come up with that on the fly. When I first started doing Big Cubes blind, I was doing it that way. I would make it up on the fly. But then after a little while, I realized I needed a little help because sometimes it took me a while to come up with one. So then I took about a month, memorized a complete set, and it cut 5 minutes off of my 4x4 blind solves. So it helped me a lot. It may not help other people as much. Anyway, Chester scrambled the cube randomly, or got an official scramble actually, and then he wrote down the letters the way he would have lettered his cube. In case you're wondering, you just pick your own orientation that you're going to use on the cube. You letter the stickers on the cube according to some pattern. Mine's A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. It really doesn't matter what you do. Just have a set system. But what he came up with was IA is this first one. For that, I had trouble with IA. It was a bad one for me. I used iambic. I imagine a poet. That's what I used. FA is Fat Albert. CW is a cow. So I imagine a poet telling a story about Fat Albert with a cow. And the next one is PS, and I imagine him pasting onto the cow. And then MH, which I have mohawk. So he pastes a mohawk. And the next one is LU, which is lumber. So I imagine him pasting a mohawk made of lumber on this cow. And D is the last letter. And if I'm using, I have 4 different sets of persons that I use for single letters and also for buffer pieces. And the first one I use is usually cartoon characters. So that would be D, which is Deputy Dog. So I imagine Deputy Dog sitting on this cow whose head is mohawk pasted made of lumber by Fat Albert. It's all being talked about by a poet. And for multi-blind, I actually string that whole thing together in a single location. So if I were using that light up there, I'd imagine the poet holding his little mandolin or something and actually singing about Fat Albert, who's also hanging from the ceiling, tasting the mohawk of the cow. So that's how I would do it. If I were doing this with big cubes, I would actually break this up, and I'd have the poet with Fat Albert and the cow, and I just put those three things together. Then I do the next one where I'd be pasting together a Mohawk blubber or something in a separate location. Then he had corners, RI, that's rice, MV, that's movie for me, and eagle, EA, which is eagle. See, I just think of the word before I even see the letters. And then K is Kanga. So I would imagine rice being thrown at a movie, maybe I'd be thinking a Rocky Horror Picture Show or something. They're throwing rice at a movie, and the eagle flies over and catches it and tosses it to a kangaroo. So that's how I would do it.
All right. I just gave you a very vague description of what I did earlier because it's hard to, yeah, you need examples to see how this works. So let me do this. This is not exactly how I would do it because I've done this for a while, so I kind of optimize my own methods. This is how I think you can start off using this method. So, some guy walked up to you and said, IAFACWPSMHLUD, memorize that. In 12 seconds. It's ridiculous. Like, you don't think you can do it, but I'm telling you, you can. And I can give you a really, really, really long string of letters and make you just memorize that random string of letters. And the way I do it is I use these things that I call hooks. So I usually come up with 4 hooks per cube, 2 for corners and 2 for edges, but I'll spare you the details of that. So I need 7 hooks right now for the edges because I'm showing you a basic watered down version of the method I use. So when I come up with these things, I just think of things that have a natural order to them. What does natural order mean? I'll give you an example. At last year's Nationals, when I had to memorize 18 cubes, I used a lot of Pokemon because like they have a natural order. Like this natural order has to be something you know. At some point I used to, because my dad has 8 siblings and my mom has 7, and so there's an order to that. You know that by heart. You don't have to think about it. It's in your subconscious. That's the kind of order you want to use. Journeys. You drive from home to work. There are certain landmarks like a gas station, a convenience store, a stoplight, this big billboard. And they appear in a certain order. You know this order because you drive to work every day. These are the kinds of things that you use. Pokemon are nice because they're Pokemon. They are animate objects. They do things instead of like a gas station, which just sits there, doesn't do anything. So I'll give you an example. One of the things I did was, Bulbasaur, Squirtle, Charmander, Pikachu. Why does that order matter? Because when you play the game, Bulbasaur, Squirtle, Pikachu appears from right to left, and you know that order. I know that order. I don't know about you. You make up these things, and I need more things right now, so I'm just going to say Ash, Misty, Brock, because that's the order they appear natural to me. These are Pokemon characters for the adults here. Why Ash, Misty, Brock, and not Ash, Brock, Misty? I don't know, because it appears natural to me that Misty should come before Brock, and so that's my order. So when I think the first thing is IA, that's Bulbasaur. Bulbasaur takes IA. What does IA mean to me? I just make stuff up on the spot. It looks a lot like Iowa. Now, Iowa is a bad thing. You don't want to memorize Iowa because Iowa it's an abstract thing. Bulbasaur can't do anything in Iowa. What you got to think of is Iowa. What do you think of? I think of corn. I don't know about you. So Bulbasaur is in Iowa eating corn. Now there's something very concrete there. The problem is, how do you not mismemorize it as corn instead of Iowa? You usually don't. I don't really have an explanation for that. So, you start with Iowa, and the next one is FA. I don't know what that is. Fat? Okay, so Squirtle became fat. Just imagine Squirtle became fat, and that works. And the next one is CW, which is cow. Charmander is burning a cow. Charmander is using his flamethrower to burn a cow. You gotta make these things interact. You can't just put a cow sitting next to Charmander, because that cow, if it's just sitting next to Charmander, that cow could have been a goat, and you wouldn't know the difference. They would have to interact with Charmander. So, and so on and so forth. And PS, the next thing, Pikachu does something with it, and Ash does something with MH, and so on. And when you go back, you think, Bulbasaur, what was Bulbasaur doing? Oh, he was eating corn in Iowa. Oh, Iowa, IA. And then the next thing was, what was Squirtle doing? Oh, it became fat, FA. And, you know, that's how it goes. And as you can see, with just a bit of imagination and some kind of prepared sequence of objects that you know very well, that I call hooks, you can memorize a lot of stuff with this, because all that stuff I made up, that was only one cube, and if you're doing it right, you should feel like there's a lot more room in your memory for this. You know, Pokemon are things, people are things. I go to college, I have roommates. I used to live in a dorm, and there was, you know, on our floor, I knew what, from the start of the hallway to the end, I knew who lived in each room, and I could make these people do things that they would never dream of doing in my head, and they don't ever need to know about it. None of you need to know about that. He doesn't need to know about that, but I get the world record. You know, that's the good thing about memory methods. Nobody needs to know about it. You make these things up, and the more vivid you make them, the better they stick. So, you know, obviously I don't really think of Iowa when I think that, but I will tell you what I think of, and you shouldn't tell anyone. Because if you can tell someone that it probably isn't vivid enough, that was an overstatement, but you get the point. Yeah, so that's how memo methods work. My memo method works.
That's really interesting.
So I guess as far as methods of actually solving the line, for a while there, Orient Permute was the big way that people would do corners, and even edges for a little while. And then M2 took over for edges. That's still pretty popular. Right now, it seems that the people who are 30-second solvers tend to be pure 3-cycle or BH or some variant thereof kind of methods where you're solving 2 pieces at a time with every single thing you do. And those of you who are into blindfold are familiar with this stuff. Those who aren't, I guess the most common method people start with is probably classic Potman, old Potman, and really a lot of people start with M2 for edges these days. So these days, to be really good, pretty much have to do, to be really good, you pretty much have to do some sort of 3-cycle or BH kind of method. Well, unless you're this guy or a couple other guys.
Yeah.
Sure.
One of the most common beginner questions, I think, is what method should I learn? How do I get fast and all these things? So memorization is a very important aspect of getting fast. I think your method, okay, what I have to say here may not be for everyone, because that's just my disclaimer, so here goes. I'm not very ambitious. I don't really want to solve a cube and blindfolded in 30 seconds. So I'm very happy with what I'm doing right now. I didn't put too much work into it, and I can memorize and solve a cube in about a minute average. That's good enough for me. I'm not trying to break any world records anymore. So I'm happy with that. And what methods can get you there? Pretty much any method can get you to average about a minute if you turn reasonably fast. I use 3OP for corners, which is the 3-cycle Orient Permute method. It was the first ancient dinosaur age method for blindfolded that nobody uses anymore. And everyone says it's bad. But I say it's good, and you should believe me. I use M2 for edges, and that's good enough. It doesn't take a lot of preparation, like, you know, BH 3-cycle methods that require you to know 378 corner cases and 440 edge cases by heart. I don't have that kind of heart to memorize that. I just have 26 letters in the English alphabet, and I don't even use all of them. So yeah, the quick answer to that question is any method works. Any method can get you fast. I think getting fast has a lot to do with what Mike said earlier, the better you get, the better you get. And what that means is when you can memorize fast, you can solve fast because you memorize all that, this entire random string of letters in a very short period of time, say 15 seconds. It comes back out really quick. Instead of like taking 5 minutes to memorize a cube, by the time you hit the 6th minute, you forgot what you memorized in the first minute. That's just the way things work. So that's what I mean by the better you get, the better you get. Yeah, methods don't matter too much to me.
Well, I guess that's what we had prepared. Any questions? Yeah.
Moving on to something bigger like and EMF 4 or 5 in a row, how do you deal with displacement that way?
So you asked if you decide to move on to something bigger, like say 6 by 6, and you DNF a bunch in a row. How do you overcome the disappointment associated with that? Well, I think I can speak a little bit to that because it took me 14 tries on 8 by 8 before I finally got it, which was pretty painful. I don't know. I mean, one of the things that Chris Hardwick has always said is that if you that every solve you get better. And it's almost true that the ones you fail, especially if you can figure out what you did wrong, the ones you fail are the ones you learn the most on. So I felt like with every one of those 14 attempts at 8 by 8, I learned something and got a little better at it, and I knew I was going to be better the next time. And that keeps me going, just knowing that I'm probably going to get better. I'm going to eventually hit it. It's just a matter of time. If you're getting close at 4 by 4 or 5 by 5, if you're getting 6 pieces, 8 pieces, 10 pieces off, but you're getting that close to solving a 4 by 4 or 5 by 5, you know how to do it. So there's no point in not trying again because you're bound to just eventually get it. It's just bad luck that you missed if you're on 6 or 8 pieces, right? So you don't think
I don't really have any desire to solve it 6 by 6 blindfolded.
But yeah, I mean, that's the thing that keeps me going. It's just, I know I'm learning from every attempt, and a lot of times I can see I'm getting better just because the times are shorter. That helps. Any other questions?
So like for 3 by 3 blindfolded, a lot of people use like freestyle commentators, PH, and then you finish cycling all the pieces, but then at the end you still might have like disoriented edges and corners. Do you just memorize that visually, or do you use like letters to memorize that? Okay,
he's asking about if you have a disoriented, or like twisted corners or flipped edges in place.
Yeah.
When you're trying to memorize, all the others are in cycles, but you have some that are just they're turned wrong, but they're in the right place already. Those are a pain. With 3 by 3 blindfolded, I do those visually because there's not very much to them. For
what about multi-blind? Yeah.
For multi, I definitely have to memorize them.
Right.
And I used to just put them in separate locations. I would group them in pairs or in triplets for the corners. So I'd have 3 that go clockwise and I put them on a clock. Or I'd have 3 that go counterclockwise and I put them on a counter, kitchen counter.
I see.
So that's how I would do that. Or I'd memorize them in pairs and put them upside down. I would do that kind of thing. But now I've found that it's kind of weird. If you've got parity case, so you've got 2 corners and 2 edges, the parity case for blindfold, and you've got some flipped edges or twisted corners in that case, you can actually just keep going and shoot to one of the 2 stickers and then shoot to the next of the 2 stickers for the 2 flip sides. And they will actually make 3 cycles that are just as fast as anything you really do by flipping or twisting. It's something I've done recently and it really helps me, but it does mean that your string of memorization gets longer, but then I can stick them all in one location and it's actually quicker for me. So I've started doing that personally. Jeff, do you have anything different you want to add about? Do you do them separately or together? You go one to the other? So he does that all the time. He just goes one to the other.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I find that when I'm solving blindfolded, over a long period of time, it gets really hard because after doing so many, I just get mentally tired. Do you find that happens to you as well, or?
So he's asking if you have if you decide to practice a lot in a row, it gets mentally exhausting to do a lot of blindfold solves in a row. I find that it isn't. My big problem is I don't have enough time to do as much blindfold solving as I'd like to do. So I generally don't have more than a couple hours at a time that I can do. But if I did, I love to go 5-6 hours at a time without stopping. If you've got a solid memory method, if you're doing something like what Chester described or what I described, and especially if you've got locations or a string of things, you can do what he suggested and just make it up a few minutes before you start. But if you've got separate places to put each of these things, separate things to hang these things off of, and if you're doing things that are active, like he was saying, don't put a cow next to a Pikachu or something, but make sure that you have them actually interacting somehow. If you have them interacting, you're okay. If you just stick them next to each other or put them in the same place, it's not going to work. But as long as you try to get these things interacting, you can just keep going with this stuff over and over as long as you want. I use different locations and memory journeys for big cubes, but for 3x3 I don't even bother with location journeys. I just do them one after another and just do a single stream of stuff that goes together in a story. And you keep going as long as you want, once you've got a good solid system.
When you do multiple, say, 5x5 attempts after another, you have 30 Roman rooms. Do you just use start with the next room that you haven't used yet, or do you always start with the same room?
So he's asking which rooms how do I pick the rooms I use for big blind and when I'm doing a bunch in a row or something. Yeah. I actually, see, one of the big things is speedsolving.com, the weekly competition is a big thing for me just because I'm silly that way. So I do 3 2x2 blinds, 3 3x3 blinds, 3 4x4 blinds, 3 5x5 blinds, a 6x6 blind, and a 7x7 blind, and a multi-blind every week. And so I have set rooms for each of those, so I never have to repeat them in a week. And so I just use the same ones every time. And so when I always have 3 sets of rooms reserved for 5x5 blind. And this week when I did the 5x5 blinds for speed solving, I used my 7x7 blind spots because I didn't have time to do 7x7 blinds this week. So now I still have my 3 good rooms, or 6 good rooms set for nationals. So.
Gotcha. Awesome.
Any other questions? Oh.
What do you think is the limit of the 1 hour multi as far as the numbers you solve? And then a secondary question, had we not switched to the 1 hour multi, where do you think we would be as far as unlimited multi?
Okay, I want Chester to answer this too. My personal opinion is, I think we will someday see, people have already told me I'm crazy, but they said I was crazy when I said 30 years ago. I think we'll hit 60. I think we'll actually hit 60. I think somebody's going to be insane if they're going to manage 60. I do, I really do. 50 certainly. I'm convinced that 50 will be done.
Oh, really?
I told you people thought I'm crazy. But people thought I was crazy when they said 30, and Marston, or whatever his name is doing 30, really. He hadn't hit it yet, but it's just a matter of time. He's got 30 left. So 30 we know is going to happen. I don't see how we could have not changed the rules. I don't see how it's possible. Yeah, there were attempts of, 50 some 60 cubes already.
Yeah.
It's a matter of bathroom breaks. It's the big issue.
It's not possible, but especially in a competition. But if you were on your own at home, how many cubes do you think you would do?
Me personally, and just as long as I wanted, I'd probably start to get in trouble around 50, 60, 70 cubes. But there's some people who wouldn't. I'm just not good enough to do much better than that.
I don't have a very thoughtful answer. I just think you know, right now 30 seconds seems to be about the limit already. If you know, you factor in the fact that you're memorizing 60 cubes, you double the time. So if you can, on average, solve a cube in 30 seconds blindfolded, then if you're doing it, you know, doing multiple cubes blindfolded, I'm assuming a minute is about, you know, you're gonna take a minute on average to solve a cube if you're doing multiple cubes blindfolded. So I think 60 is about right, but I don't really believe that. I don't think anyone will ever be that crazy. Maybe this guy, but you know. As for the absolute max, I can just keep going, man. There's so many Pokemon out there. I can just sit down and just keep making stuff up, and you know, Pokemon you use up, I can use up other cartoon characters, and I can use a lot of people, and I can just keep going. Give me a week to memorize, I'll just sit down and, I mean, if you pay me, I would do it. I don't think there's a limit for absolute. Yeah, if there's no time limit, I don't think there's a limit.
Yeah, I'd like to clarify, when I said 50 or 60 cubes, that's with the old limit, which was 10 minutes per cube. I think I could get to 50 or 60 in minutes from now. It'd be because of the time limit. I can keep going. I mean, my square one blind method, I have 800 images memorized permanently for that. So that'll hold me a little while. I mean, that's not a lot, but still, it's enough to add up to something. Any other questions? Well, thank you.